Hello and welcome everyone to the presentation on the reading for week 1, Exterminate All the Brutes by Sven Lindqvist, which primarily focuses on the history of development of race and racism. So what essentially is a race? Race is a false classification of people that is not based on any real or accurate biological or scientific truth. In other words, the distinction we make between races has nothing to do with scientific truth. That means we all human beings are born equal. Furthermore, race is a political construction. A political construction is something created by people that is not a natural development, hence is constructed or created for a political purpose. But just because race and whiteness are constructed doesn't mean that it doesn't fundamentally affect our world in real ways. Moreover, and most importantly, the concept of race was created as a classification of human beings with the purpose of giving power to white people and to legitimize the dominance of white people over the non-white people. In order to further establish these points, we need to delve deeper in the history and various aspects of white society which were involved in the construction of race and racism. The first in line of these factors that led to the birth of racism is religion. During the Reformation, 16th and 17th century, a key question among Christian religion hierarchy was whether blacks and Indians had souls and were they human. In this time period, Europeans were exposed more frequently to Africans and the indigenous people of North and South America. As the church vacillated between opinions, the Catholic and the Protestant churches arrived at different answers to the question at different times, which created significant differences between the two systems of slavery. The Catholic Church was the first to admit blacks and Indians had soul, which meant in many Catholic colonies it was against the law to kill a slave without reason. The Protestant Calvinist Church wanted to separate and distinguish themselves from Catholicism and therefore was much slower in recognizing the humanity of Africans and Indians. With the increasing importance of slavery, religion was used as a means to justify racist divisions, classifying people of color as pagan and soulless. However, as substantial numbers of people of color were converted to Christianity and as religion itself lost much of its power as a legitimizing agent, justifications for the brutality of slavery changed. The slave-based economy in the South necessitated a racist exploitative system which led to the development of biological, zoological and botanical theories to explain human differences and to justify slavery. The next factor is pseudoscience. Racism as a widely accepted scientific theory of behavior appeared in the 19th century when racial discrimination and prejudices got construed as scientific discoveries by the scholars of that time. One of the most prominent figures of the 19th century was Charles Darwin, whose theory was biological evolution was extended to social Darwinism that suggested the survival of the fittest. In 1838, J.C. Pritchard, a famous anthropologist, lectured on the extinction of human races. He said it was obvious that the savage races could not be saved. It was the law of nature. Later on, in 1866, Frederick Farrar made pseudo-scientific attempts to categorize races into three groups. First, the savage group, which included all Africans, indigenous people, people of color with the exception of the Chinese. The second, semi-civilized, included Chinese who were once civilized but now their society was in arrested development. And lastly, the civilized group of European, Aryan and Semitic people. Next factor is medicine, which is a further branch of science. In 1850, Robert Knox, in The Races of Men, a fragment took popular prejudices and formed them into scientific conviction, and that race and intelligence are linked and hereditary. Robert Knox was a famous English anatomist. Knox concluded that people of color were intellectually inferior, not because of brain size but rather because of brain texture and lack of nerve endings. Later, it was found that his conclusion was based on the autopsy of only one man of color. Knox's studies and others were taken very seriously, which can be seen as the origins of the 20th century eugenic movement. Next we have slavery. Slavery existed before racism, and America was thus the cause for racism in America. In order to protect this sinful institution of slavery, they attempted to rationalize racism for slavery and colonialism, and also as a means of splitting working class along the lines of color and of deflecting attention from the central reality of class conflict to ancillary problem of race. Next factor is eugenics. Eugenics is an effort to breed better human beings by encouraging the reproduction of people with good genes and discouraging those with bad genes. Eugenicists effectively lobbied for social legislation to keep racial and ethnic groups separate, to restrict immigration from Asia, Africa and Southern and Eastern Europe, and to sterilize people considered genetically unfit. Elements of the American eugenic movement were models for the Nazis, whose radical adaptation of eugenics culminated in the Holocaust. The United States took eugenics and ran with it, making it part of mainstream society. By 1928, 376 separate college courses which enrolled 20,000 students focused on eugenics, and an analysis of high school textbooks from 1914 to 1948 indicates that the majority presented eugenics as legitimate. Immigration between 19th and 20th centuries, over 600 separate pieces of anti-Asian legislations were passed limiting Asians from citizenship. Non-citizens had almost no rights. White could kill Asians with impunity because they could not testify in court. Interracial marriage. Eugenics provided a new set of arguments to support existing restrictions on interracial marriage. By 1915, 28 states made a marriage between Negroes, Asian, Indians, Latinos, and a white person illegal. 6 states included such prohibitions in their constitution. Virginia's Racial Integrity Act of 1924 stands out among these laws. This law included racial registration certificates as well as defining what white was. Within 10 years, similar laws were found in Nazi Germany, sorting citizens by their percentage of Jewish blood. Virginia's Racial Integrity Act was not successfully challenged and struck from the books until 1967. It took Alabama until November 2000 to strike a law banning interracial marriages. Sterilization. Eugenics also promoted sterilization. A man by the name of Harry Laughlin promoted the model sterilization law in Virginia in 1914. The model eugenical sterilization law proposed the sterilization of the socially inadequate people supported in institutions or maintained wholly or in part by public expense. The law encompassed the feeble-minded, insane, criminalistic, epileptic, inebriate, diseased, blind, deaf, deformed and dependent, including orphan tramps, the homeless and paupers. By 1914, 12 states passed sterilization law. According to Levinstrom theory, the Jews were landless people. Like the stunted hunting people of the African interior, they belong to an even lower race than Russian and Poles, a race which could not lay claim to the right to live. It was only natural that such lower races, where Tasmanians, Indians, or Jews, should be exterminated if they were in the way. The other Western master races had done just that. The Nazi gave the Jews a star on the coat and crowded them into reserves, just as the Indians, the Hereros, the Bushmen, the Amandibile, and all the other children of the stars had been crowded together. They died out on their own when the food supply to the reserves was cut off. If they did not die fast enough, then it was merciful to kill them, merciful and shorten their suffering, for they were going to die anyhow. That's it for today. Thank you so much for listening, and please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.